There we go. Okay. Hello and welcome to this week's Rugby Bits podcast of Chasing the Sun 2 episode 4 review, and more importantly, Elizabeth. We have another great bonus to give you very, very quickly. Is we actually not only joined by Cooks today, but Jared too. Jared, how's Mud Island treating you?
Yeah, going good. Can't complain too much. Keen to get stuck into this.
I'm sure. Have you been watching all of them, or did you only pick up this episode?
I've been watching all of them. I couldn't not watch them. They really are brilliant. I think they've taken it to another level this time.
Absolutely. And Cooks, it looks like I'm running at 10 today. Are you comfortable at 9? I know you got picked up a little bit of a hobble this weekend.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the reins at 9. Since we managed to clear Jared's agent and managed to get all that done, the payments finally got through. We couldn't get in first 3 episodes, but episode 4 for the semi-final, we finally got the check to go through and we get Jared this. So I'm happy to be in at 9.
Awesome. And
yeah,
sorry,
Cooks, you knew you had to get the firepower up front. This episode is obviously chasing the scrum, so I'm happy to come in the front row I can fiddle for all 3 positions up in the front row. So I'm happy
harbor,
to come in.
Are we going to harbor? We're going to harbor, eh?
Yeah, we're going to harbor, man.
Nice.
Just give me the call, Cooks.
There we go. And for the first time ever, we've got a playmaker 10, 12 playmaker. Jared, I think we'll also slot you in at 12. But we'll get onto the harbor soon, because I'll tell you one thing. If you didn't know anything about scrummaging, you learned a hell of a lot from this episode. Ox takes us through a lot. Don Human is incredible, and I really love his views on scrum machines, but we will get to that a little bit later. Episode 3 ended at halftime in the French game, which was wild. Probably the most exciting game of the lot, and they don't give us the whole game. It was crazy. But we kicked this 4th episode off with finishing up against France, and we have a look at Ibn Etzebeth spending time with his yellow card, and he says it's the longest 10 minutes of his life. In a game like that, it's absolutely wild. I do distinctly remember during that game, didn't they notify him just after halftime that it hadn't been upgraded to a red or something? I can't remember exactly, but I do remember that.
Just before halftime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad he didn't have to sit through the whole of halftime with that. But yeah, Ibn Etzebeth, those 10 minutes, he powered himself up, Jared, and unleashed it on the field when he got back.
Yeah, I think it was also the longest 10 minutes of every South African's life, not just Ibn Etzebeth. Like the longest 10 minutes that we had till that point. With the later episodes, I think we sort of we learned how long 10 minutes really can be. But it sort of reminded me the end of the last episode. I don't know if you guys watched The Walking Dead. And in that one season finale, you just see the guy cut off one of the other actors' heads or whatever, and you don't figure out who it is, and you have to wait until the next season starts. It was almost like that, but you know what's happening, but you're still sitting there in angst the whole week.
Yeah, and yeah, we definitely had that. And just a note to anyone and the gents moving forward, please know more of that. If you can just finish it week by week, game by game, because just bear in mind, we actually went through this whole thing in October last year. There's nothing new. Cooks, I think one thing that was highlighted in those very short snippets, of the French game was Jesse Creel's impact. I had a look at some of the stats from the game. He made 14 tackles. I think it was the most by any backline player. But his involvement in that game, even though we were just seeing little bits of it, was incredible.
Yeah, he was incredible that game. I think the praise he got, and rightfully so. I think I've never seen more Jesse Creel apologies after that game on Twitter in a long time. I mean, I think everyone showed out and showed what a good quality player is, and he was outstanding. Probably he's probably his best game in a Bok jersey. Probably Ibn Etzebeth as well, who's played a lot of great games in a Bok jersey. But I thought Jesse was outstanding. I'd have loved to hear his story. I think hopefully they'll tell it in the final, because he's someone that I think in rugby, but we've always been Jesse Kriel fans, all of us, but he's sort of gone that up and down roller coaster with Springbok fans, and some guys didn't want him and some were ready to throw him away. But that game that was, I think, with Chasing the Sun, everyone seems to have their moments in the box. We always remember the boxes, like everyone has their special game that stands out. I think for Jesse Kriel, that French one is definitely one where you go, if the first thing or the first test you think of Jesse Kriel, you think of that French test.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about like so much more that we're going to wait for in the final episode. They've got a lot of work to do. It must be a 5-hour finale with amount of players that still need to do their time. But the intensity of that game was incredible. Like everyone knew it building up, and in the game, it was, as many of us have mentioned, it's probably one of the best games of the World Cup. The 2 quarterfinals, ours and the All Black Ireland game was incredible. But Jared, a little bit of banter after Damien Delaney kicked the ball forward, they earned a penalty, and there was a little tap and go. Bongi Mbonambi seems like quite a ruthless operator, but he just flat out just said Bongi that Kwagga was in the wrong place when they tried their backline move.
Yeah, these Springbok players all hold each other accountable, but I liked Kwagga saying, yeah, of course he said that, because yeah, I think it sort of shows what their mentality throughout the World Cup and just in the squad is, that yeah, everything's out in the open. So of course Bongi went and threw Kwagga under the bus, but Kwagga then went and pretty much sealed the result for the Springboks. So I think he came out on top in the end.
Yeah, just that game, finishing off that game, that little snippet in Chasing the Sun 2. We touched on Elizabeth, that youngster who was shouting at him on the TV when he scored the try. Incredible moments. Cooks, that in South Africa at the time, like that was a long week between that quarterfinal and that final, but that was front and center in everything for all of us.
It was, I mean, because it was a great video, and obviously him losing his mind. And the funny thing is, but if you think about that week, especially the Springboks, like they showed the Chasers on too. Like I think in South Africa in general, it was probably a lot more relaxed week because of how well we played against France, and then we're celebrating how well it's a bit played. We're praising Jesse, and there was a sense of, I think you can see the boxers in camp. There was everything was positive, everything was great, unchanged side, and we raving South Africa. We just knocked out the host. We have Elizabeth. Everything is great. I think come like Friday, things start to turn. I remember Jared was tweeting, going like, "Oh, Jesus, this English side tomorrow could be interesting." Because I remember at least the first 4 days of it was positive. I mean, obviously the French week was stress, and we were stressing. And the box, obviously, before the Tonga week, we saw in Elizabeth and Dwayne fighting, and obviously put in the corner. So, but that French week, I mean, the English week, you could see like it was just everything was so positive. Everything was great. I mean, I still love Jacques Nienaber after they're discussing the team, and Don Human is the first one to go like, guys, I think we should go 6-2. But eventually they go like, no, we'll go 5-3. Then as it ends with the advert, Jacques going, love it. Great spun, Rassi. Great spun.
Yeah.
I love that part.
It was so good. There was so much happening. Like, especially when Eben was front and center of last week and this week as well in the beginning, where he's just standing with the players after the French game, and he's like, just 13 more days. Like, all I want from you is 13 more days. It was crazy. And Cooks, staying with you and Don, like when he spoke about live scrummaging, so this man lives, breathes, eats scrums. That's one thing for sure. And I'll be first to say, like, I didn't know much about Don Human when he got appointed. Like, I knew who he was. I was a little bit worried and concerned, to be fair. So my apologies there. Excuse me there. But he just does live scrummaging. And that is obviously like Jacques Nienaber knows about this. Rassi knows about this. But then they still go and take 4 scrum halves when they could have taken an extra pop. What the hell?
No, it's crazy. But shame. Tough time to be a scrum machine salesman after Don Human said that doesn't believe in machines. I mean, that's you got to change careers there. But I mean, I thought he was my MVP of that episode was Don Human because of just the passion he knows about scrumming and the way he speaks about it. Also, he's so intense about the way he speaks about scrumming. Like you can see in his eyes and the way he speaks, just like like you just like, man, like I would hate, like as much as, and even as much as the opposition feels the Springbok scrum, those practice sessions. I mean, the way Trevor and Franz were speaking about Ox, I'm like, no wonder the Ox don't fear opposition, because we've got the two best, I mean, front props in the world going up each other every week, and it's live scrums. It's relentless. They're scrumming what 60 to 80 times a week. So no wonder they don't fear any of the opposition. No wonder like poor Vincent and Trevor and Franz have got to face Kitty and Ox like the whole week. So it's like, so when they're going to face like Ellis Gange or Seal By, they're like, oh, we'll deal with that on the weekend. And the way, I think the way Don Human takes such personal responsibility and of the scrum, like this is a weapon. We will win games with this thing. When it's time to shine, we will. And he talks about how hard they work, and it's like we will have a moment. And we saw it against England. And like Jared, I mean, one of his tweets I saw the other day when he mentioned that we don't win that semi-final without Ox and Chair. And then to see that work before and how hard they actually worked to get there. And I thought it was incredible. I thought he, like, for such a quiet oak, and I thought he was incredible.
Yeah, and if you look at like retrospectively, we gave Gert Steenkamp a cap just before the World Cup, and he was like phenomenal on his debut, and then he went and played for the Bulls afterwards, and he was phenomenal again. Like we're like, oh wow, who's this Lucid? Why are they calling up this Lucid from the Bulls? And then he's just been on another level, and it's obviously just that month that he spent with the Springboks working with Don that has taken him to that next level. And what I really loved about this episode is, if you compare it to a lot of the other rugby documentaries, there was like the scrum was spoken about, but not like this. This is like it really like gave you a good insight to what it is or what it feels like to be in a scrum. I mean, even if you've played in the front row before and you've been in one scrum, it's nowhere near that kind of level of intensity of what these guys are talking about. And I think it came through brilliantly. And like, this is unapologetically a rugby documentary. Yes, it comes with all the love and admiration of the Springboks and all of that kind of thing. But at the heart of it, it shows what like the big cause and big like Jacques says, you put your cock on the block, and that's it exactly when it comes to the scrums, and you get a real sense of it and what you're actually going in there to do. I mean, Don saying that we're holding guys tight because we don't want them to pass out, because that's how much stress your body's under. It's frightening.
Yeah.
Jared,
the guys were chatting about.
Sorry, Shoki.
No, shoot.
No, I was saying, like, Jared, like, it's such a great point, because when they made Chase the Sun 2, I think you look at the first Chase the Sun was but a hope, and the messages to the Africans and what the Springboks are based on. What I love now with the guys at TNW, Gareth and Lungani, those guys, what they've gotten right this time is they've shown what makes the Springboks so good in terms of they're still a very well coached side. The tactics are on point. The rugby they play is good, and it just showed that the technical aspects of how good they are, and actually just showing as a pure rugby fan, you're going, man, hearing Felix Jones talk in those when he talks, and the way the coaches meetings are, all of that players. Yes, there is hope. Yes, they want to give back to South Africa, but at the end of the day, they still got to play rugby. Like at the end of the day, you still got to win rugby. Like other teams want it just as much, and it's just so great to see the technical aspect about like the way they spoke about scrums for a good 20 minutes of Ox talking about how to get underneath someone and things like that, where you're like, man, this is like, you're right. At its core, it's the story for South Africa, but it's still a rugby documentary. It's still a side that's got to go and scrum. It's still a side that's got to go and defend. And I love the fact they showcase that the Springboks are still a bloody good rugby side. And it's not just built on hope, built on, oh, this is for South Africa, on emotion. No, it's built on, we just know how to beat teams, and we have great coaches, and we have the best players in the world.
Yeah, and you spoke about the squad selection there, and I love that we still get to see some of that. And I mean, we are all shocked with the quarterfinal team selection. If you think back to the actual week of the France game, we were all shocked that Quibus was starting at scrum off. We thought Andre would probably get in, but he didn't. And then to go into the semi-final, and they just like, how can we actually like drop anyone from this team? Like they're talking
Yeah.
about Don wants his extra forward, and he's like, we need an extra forward, and they're like, yeah, but that means dropping Damian Willemse from the starting lineup. What has Damian Willemse done to justify our drop? So that's just another thing. We rugby mad individuals of this country. We want to know those little details, and it's nice that we get to see that as well.
Yeah, it's actually something I wanted to touch on. You know, obviously Don Human. One thing I will say is that he took Russie's chirp personally when he said that they only had one scrum the last time, so he took it on his own. Essentially, he just said, "Hold my beer, I got this." But I wanted to touch on, Jared, with you specifically, and then Cooks, we can go to you about that conversation around where Don Human was essentially, I think he knew that they were going to go 5-3, but he really was fighting for a 6-2. And it wasn't that I want to talk about. I want to talk about Russie's comment on saying that Damian Willemse would have lost out. Now, Damian Willemse has traveled an interesting journey on the Rugby Bits socials and on our podcast with where we feel he should be fitting in, and everyone's having those conversations. But I honestly was shocked when I saw that. I thought there's no ways that Damian Willemse is going to have to fall away if we're going for a 6-2. They would obviously put Willie at 15, but I thought Damian Willemse was a shoe-in on the 6-2.
Yeah, well, it's crazy that we get these ideas in our mind of what we think the Bok coaches will do, and they never fail to shock us. Because I think the thinking is there is that they needed Willie in the team overall, and then if we went for 6-2, they weren't going to drop Andre from the squad because they needed Andre's goal kicking. And like Jacques talks about it later in the semi-final about it's Andre's third World Cup, and I think we easily forget that, and the kind of experience and BMT that comes with that. Willems has never done that. He was before this World Cup. He sat on the sidelines for the knockouts in 2019. So yeah, you need that experience in those big games, and I think that's exactly where it was. And yes, we would have never dropped Damian Willems, but we also don't get paid the millions of rands that Rassie and Jacques do to make sure that the Springboks come back with the World Cup title.
We just need Jacques and Rassie to actually or Rassie now. Can they just stay in these meetings and post them on Twitter before we play Ireland, just so we can ask the Africans stop trying to figure out what's in their heads? Because we all thought if they try to go 6-2, Willemse would be probably the last person you would drop. But again, they did the week after they would go 7-1 split with the Villiers on the bench and no scrum off. So like you said, you can't figure out these oaks, it's also based on the trust they have in each other as coaches and the team and the player and the trust the players have in them. Because I can imagine if Rassie, the coaches walk there and they go, listen, sorry, Willems, Damien, you are benched because you want the extra forward. And what I do find strange is, with that, what I know strange, but surprisingly is, the most surprising thing they actually did was not the 6-2, the 7-1s, is the fact they went for an unchanged side, which had happened twice in their whole 10 years, Matthew Pierce said. So that's probably the more shock than anything else, is the fact that they didn't change the team. They just named the exact same side, because normally you feel like the box horses for courses. Okay, this team that we pick for this, we're not going to pick on emotion. We're going to pick on, okay, yes, this guys were great last week. Let's keep the momentum going. So that was, for me, is actually the more surprising thing, is it not because of who's being dropped, in terms of they just you can play well, but they go listen, we're playing Australia now. We can't have the same team against the All Blacks, so your next game against Argentina. That's how they operate. So for them to go same squad, that probably shocked England more than anyone else.
Yeah, it was crazy that week leading up. So not only, I think everyone pretty much wrote England off. They had taken a pretty rocky journey on the way through to that semi-final. A lot of changes, a lot of player conversations, stuff like that. But one thing that I think was pretty clear is that the players, Jacques Nienaber, Rassie, and the rest, didn't do that. Eben, I think, was talking a lot about the 2019 final and how that England are still harboring that. And the other guys were chatting about how dangerous that is, playing a team like that in that space. And obviously the emotional side, which I thought was very interesting, because we felt it. Like the emotions of us beating the journey we took all together was just a flipping roller coaster. But the players like having to get themselves up. Kobus Reinach talks about like how absolutely flat and dead he was, and yeah, it was crazy. Cooks, that England brought it. England brought it like I've never seen before. They were incredible. Very interesting. In England, so we all know South Africa, the Springboks kick a lot. We used to kick around about like between 27 and 30 times a game. So we've kind of gone into that. England kicked 41 times in that game. So
I know they almost outboxed the box, which was their plan. I think having rewatched that game, I think I watched it 3 times, and I really find that game so fascinating. And the rewatch, but it's a different type of game in the French game, and obviously it's a tactical fight, and England brought it, and they were very good. And from an England point of view, I would have brought George Ford on a little bit earlier, especially when you go 20, like when they had all the momentum. So look for that try, because it did look like a one-try game. Whoever scores the first try will probably win the game in the box. But the box do so well. I think we saw in that French 10 minutes when Earburn was at halftime, and Felix Jones said, even in the England game, as good as England were playing, they were still in that game. As good as England were, the box, they were never too far out of the game. And the box is so good at what Jacques says, don't let go of the rope. And the box is so good and just, even when they're not at their best, it's like a 30-minute period, they don't let the game get away from them. And there's only a few sides, like you almost have to be like the All Blacks, where you're able to score 3 quick tries or 2 quick tries, because if you keep the box in the game, and England did that the whole game, the box just took it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I felt it when Curtly Arns at the drop, they spoke about it, my heart sank. When I was watching yesterday, it felt like I was back in that semi-final, because I thought that's game. I'm like, oh, I was like, this is the game. And I mean, it's easy now saying in hindsight because we won, but I mean, even that Farrell drop goal after we had gotten back into the game, and I don't want the Springboks to ever play. I don't want the Springboks to ever put me through the 80 minutes they put me through against England, like ever again. Because that was, I still tweeted yesterday, I think I had about 4 beers in about 40 minutes, and like they weren't touching sides. That's the stuff that's happening.
yeah.
I will say, Cooks, that you said there that it was like the Boks basically playing themselves, and I think for the first time ever, we like a test team played against themselves from 4 years ago, because that England team was basically the 2019 Springboks in so many senses, because they spoke about the hurt of 2019. We were emotionally driven in 2019 by the poor performances before Rassie and Jacques came in and proving everyone wrong and getting the Springboks back to being the Springboks. And that's very much what England were in 2023 as well, like putting the ghosts of Eddie Jones behind them, coming together and proving a point to the rest of the rugby world. And then they went and carbon copied our 2019 tactics and just did it back to us. And like the other thing is that the Springboks are so momentum focused, especially back in 2019. Like we're always going forward. Like we're going backwards in attack, we just kick the ball away and we go and contest forwards. And I think it's Quirvis that says it in the Chasing the Sun, that he says we were just turning around the whole time. Like we couldn't make any contact because we were just turning around and chasing the ball. And yeah, it's a hard watch. That's one again. I'm surprised you've done it 3 times, Cooks, because I've watched it I think twice, and that third time I can't bring myself to do it because I was just livid during the game when it was actually happening, and I couldn't believe that we were going to get beaten in our way by our tactics.
I remember, Jared, when the game ended, we obviously had mates. I was still convinced that we had lost. Like it took me like the next day to be like, yes, we're in the final. That whole Saturday night, I was like, oh my, it's like, how on earth did we, like, how did, and I think the greatest thing for me is when I love when Andre spoke about like when the bench comes on, the guys' eyes lit up, and I mean, Quacker Smith, Ox, Trevor, our bench is incredible, and we've seen the evidence that because. I mean, they got us out that game. I mean, some of the plays that Quacker Smith was making in there, and I do hope they give him some love because that oak is the ultimate. You could be a top 10 rugby player of the world, but just come off the bench. Because I was saying, if Bucks never starts a game in the Springboks, I'll be a very happy man. Because the relief of knowing he's coming on the 50th minute, like the ease I have, and I just think it shows again the Springboks how they have plan A to plan D. As poor as we were against England, someone like Kwaka and RJ can come in, and Ox comes on, and it changes the game just like that. And but yeah, I can't do that. We can't against Ireland. I hope that doesn't happen. Please, just I'll take a 42-41 any day of the week. Then I don't want a 15-12 game at Loftus, please.
Yeah, that was crazy. Interesting. So obviously you talk about the subs that came on. Almost all of them came on in the first. I think we only had one player left on the bench to bring on after 50 minutes. But one thing that really hit me at halftime when they're chatting to Dwayne Vermeulen, he's talking like a coach. He's not talking like a player. The things that he's saying and what he's doing and the perception and the things that he's getting into are definitely, it's with a coaching hat and not a playing hat, which is so fun. But that halftime alone was crazy. Cooks, just seeing the conversations, Rassie throwing his shit, like, and then Peter Steff, like, that guy only speaks in emergencies. He's like the beast, you know, he only talks in emergencies, and this was clearly an emergency.
No, that was an incredible speech. And I love that it wasn't about hope. It wasn't about bringing the country together. It's as simple as, are you guys scared? Like, it's all of that. Like, are you scared? Like, let's go make a plan. Let's go win this. And someone like Peter Steff is, you can tell, like, and I love how the guys say, like, when he speaks, everyone listens, but he doesn't speak much. And I love that speech of Peter Steff. And wasn't pretty. It's not going to be quoted in an Oscar movie. Just as simple as that. Oxter, come on. Like, why are you being scared? Let's go sort this shit out. Like, it's a World Cup semi-final, and I love that.
Yeah, I think Rassie went in there with a plan to get some sort of emotion out of the players. He obviously wanted a reaction, but I think he got a better reaction than he could have ever asked for, because like I don't think it matters what Peter Steff said. I think it just mattered that it was Peter Steff. It was the messenger, not the message, that mattered. And I mean, like you say, it wasn't anything pretty. It's something that you will hear on an under-13s pitch, like your part-time coach, the dad that's like doing the coaching, will say, "Oh, are you guys scared? Is that why we're behind? You're scared. You're scared." Like, it's not a great message, but it's who it's coming from. I mean, you could see when Rassie was going off like that, it personally hurt Peter Steff du Toit. You could see in his face that he took it personally. I mean, for a lot of guys, it could have been their last Springbok cap. Obviously, for Dwayne, it could have been his last one. Okay, and I don't think anyone understands it better than Peter Steff du Toit. I mean, he almost had his leg amputated twice. He's running around with, I don't know how old his dad is, 60 years old. He's running around with a 60-year-old hamstring in his leg. And at any second, it could be his last test match. And if he feels like he's given his absolute all and the other players around him aren't, yeah, he's going to let you have it. And he let them have it.
Yeah, the Springbok space and environment is incredible. Rasmus, and he's definitely the bad cop in this situation, but he really taps into that emotional side. This is not fuck them up physically season 1. This is season 2, where it's about South Africa on that try line. Are you going to protect it like South Africa, like you protect your daughter, your mother, whoever? Like, it's big. And there's a lot of good cop, bad cop, and there's a lot of great balance throughout that entire team. I think Bongi is pretty badass. Like, everyone else around him is pretty chilled and soft and everything. Bongi will let you know, like, you're in the wrong place. And everyone's like, yep, we knew he would have said that. I knew I fucked up, and that was that. But the one thing for me was, like, when Arendse dropped that ball, and Cooks, you touched on it a little while ago, when he dropped that ball and he was just so like, that's it, we're going home. Andre Pollard was like, whoa, this is big. But Kwaka Smith was the good guy in that. You know, like, negativity is like a cold, you know, it like spreads. But the thing is the Springboks are like, also, there's a lot more happiness there, and that's the medicine that fixes everything. And we've got more happiness and more good vibes that kills off the cold. Like often we've seen teams where the negativity gets into them and they disappear and that's it, they're gone. But like Kwaka coming up to Kirkley and just telling him everything's going to be fine is incredible. Cooks, last 5 minutes. Pollard, Farrell's nailed a drop kick. They're looking pretty good. We know, like, I also felt like we lost the game. It really felt like a loss. But then they bring on Ford, and then they got Ford Farrell on the park, and there are minutes remaining. How are you feeling about that?
Okay, the funny thing is, I felt more calmer when England was actually trying to throw the ball around at the end and they were desperate. Because then I thought they played into the box hands. Because I was like, now they're desperate. Sort of they're forcing things now. Like, okay, this is exactly where we want England to be. Because before then, they were so meticulous in the way they were attacking. So we just like said, we couldn't get up. But at the end, as soon as we went up by 1 point and England were trying to score a try from 60 meters or get a penalty, I was like, I feel fine, because I feel like it's too far out to get a penalty, and I don't know how they're going to get a line break as well at the same time. I don't think they had the players on the field then, the type of players to open up the Springboks. And I think I was a lot more calmer, like when you're running out the clock, especially you watch the end there. I was like, okay, cool. Now the penalty will come. So I just felt like if I was England, that George Ford comes on probably just after, as soon as after the drop goal, to try to get that try when it's about 15-6 ish, and what were they? 15-6, yeah, around about there, I think then. But I was a lot more. I was very good. I won't say calm, but I was just like, as long as they keep the ball in hand, I'm happy.
Yeah. The Springboks defense was incredible. We pointed out during the World Cup. Someone did mention it. I can't remember who, but put me on. But if you look at the way the Springboks were defending in those last phases, they were comfortably a half a meter behind the ruck. There was no chance that there was going to be an offside. And I think it obviously means the refs get to focus on something else. But I think the big thing for me was how hard it hits Bongi and Benambi afterwards. The man is crying, like he's in there alone. So the team are outside, and he's in there alone, and it was pretty hardcore. Jared, wrapping up, that to see the big man like that must be quite something, eh?
Yeah, and I think it's another point where we hear a whole lot of how much pressure these guys are under, and that's actually a moment that encapsulates just how much pressure they actually were under during the World Cup, and how much it means to each guy. Like, you always get the sound bites in the press conferences and that kind of thing. Like, it's everything for us. We got to allow body out there on the line, blah blah blah. And then this is a moment that actually shows that for Bongi and Benambi, it's the God honest truth, and it's not just a throwaway line. And the pressures of having to be the captain, having to lead the pack, and take on all that responsibility, play 80 minutes again when he's used to playing 40, 30, 50. Like, it was a lot for them. And like the week that would happen after that, like just after seeing him like that, and then we know what sort of happens in the week afterwards with Tom Curry. But like, to me it was just big men do cry. That's it. Even the top dog.
Yeah,
I just loved that ending. It wasn't what Rassie did was, like when after Bongi they let him have his moment, and then Bongi comes for a handshake and Rassie just gives him a hug, and it's just like, and it just shows that, like, how human they are at the end of the day, and what the coach and the players mean to each other. And for someone like that to be comfortable enough to go in and cry and allow his emotions, and something Rassie always speaks about, allowing oaks to be themselves, and even someone like Bongi, for him to be able to express and show himself how much it means to him. That ending got me cheap, because it's the last thing you expect to see. You see him walking in the change room, man. It's the last thing you expect to see.
and
you don't see it. You don't expect to see Mark Tyson having a soft moment.
No. And he was alone. Tell you what, on that Curry thing that obviously blew up the following week, Curry gave Sia Khaleesi a pretty hard rip at the collar when there was a little bit of a hoorah in the first half, and like that wasn't necessary. So anyway, we'll leave that where we leave that. I think it's all been resolved. But that's going to wrap up this week's review, and we've got one more to come. Please subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. And Jared, it was amazing having you back, my man. We hopefully will see you soon. Your position's still up and available. Cooks, my man, it's always a pleasure. We'll see who takes a run in it next week. But that's it. Thanks very much. Bye bye.
Cheers, guys.